So Brazil is probably the most diverse country on planet Earth. You have blonde and blue-eyed girls like Gisele Bundchen. You have redheads like Marina Rui Barbosa. You have black girls like Thaís Araújo. You have black mixed girls like Juliana Alves. You have white brunettes like Bruna Marquezine. That's actually the least sexy picture that exists of her. It's crazy. And then you even have Japanese Brazilian girls like Dani Suzuki. Okay, but like, where do you find these girls? All right, so here's the demographic map of Brazil. Broad strokes, if you want a pardo or mixed girl, you go to the north. If you want a white girl, you go to the south. If you want a black girl, you go to specific pockets like Salvador or Recife. And if you want an indigenous girl, then you go west. That seems pretty great, right? That seems like exactly what you want. Well, if you just do something quickly for me, if you just click the like and subscribe button down here, and then also if you're planning your own trip either to Latin America to meet girls, or you just want to talk about dating Latinas, or you're planning a trip abroad that has nothing to do with picking up girls, click the link below. It's a consultation form. We'll talk for an hour and I'll help you plan your next trip. But first, a little bit of history so you can understand why things are the way that they are. This isn't a Brazilian girl that you're going to meet. This is Pedro Álvares Cabral. He was the first person to reach Brazil for the Portuguese in the year 1500. He's the person that you can thank for all the Brazilian baddies, and also, as you can see, he has resting Chad face. The first Portuguese settlements were primarily interested in something called Brazil wood. This was mainly used for things like dye, and it's actually where the name Brazil comes from. The first Portuguese who came to Brazil basically had excursions into the mainland, chopped down a lot of trees, came down and shipped them out back to Portugal. That is until they realized that the farmland was perfect for growing sugar and cotton. That's when they started to bring in enslaved Africans and started enslaving indigenous people in order to be able to extract those resources. The first sustained colony of Portuguese in Brazil was in Olinda, which is right outside of Recife. And then in the year 1549, they created the first capital of Brazil in Salvador, which was a critical node in Brazil's import and export economy. This is where a lot of the African slaves came in, and a lot of the sugar and cotton were shipped out back to Brazil. And it's the reason why Salvador remains today the hub of Afro-Brazilian culture and one of the biggest Afro-Latina cities in the entire world. Okay, this is all interesting, but why does this matter to you? And this is the part that I know that you actually care about. If you are looking to date a black Brazilian, Salvador is the place that you want to go to. The problem, though, is that it's a little bit dangerous. But Recife, which also has a large black population, is a lot more dangerous. So if you're looking to pick up a black Brazilian girl, I'd recommend Salvador, especially you can have a much better cultural experience there. These are the two main places to go if you're looking for a black Brazilian. Now, if you're looking for a mixed Brazilian, you want to go to the north. And I'm going to tell you about exactly where you should go in a second. But first, please like this video and click subscribe, and then also schedule a one-on-one consultation if you want help planning your next trip. One more quick thing. I've started a Substack where I talk about travel. Please click on that. There's a link below as well, and click subscribe. Please become a paying subscriber if you're able to. All right, so we've covered black Brazilian girls, so now I'm going to show you where the pardo girls are at. In Portuguese, pardo means a mixed girl, which means like half white, half indigenous, or half black. You know, typically looks like this. This is honestly what most people think of when they think of Brazilian women. So one thing about Brazil, you know, I know this is not politically correct to say, but it's a very dangerous country. And the cities that are more mixed and more African and more indigenous are typically a lot more dangerous, mainly because they're a lot more poor than the cities that are white. So the main thing that you have to consider when going to a city in Brazil to pick up pardo girls is how safe that city is versus how fun and interesting it is as a cultural experience. You want to balance those two things, right? The safest place to go is a city called Rio Branco. The only problem with Rio Branco is that it's like all the way over here, so you don't really want to go there, right? Where I would go instead is Aracaju or São Luís, which is kind of like the biggest northern city that I think is reasonably safe based on everything that I've heard and everything that I've talked to people about. All right, I've never been to Belém, but there's a lot of baddies, and all my friends who are from there say that it's really safe. That being said, the statistics say something completely different, so go at your own risk. More questionable places where you're starting to risk it are Natal, João Pessoa, or Campina Grande. But the thing is, all of these cities have a larger white population and are only like 55% pardo. But I mean, here's the thing, right? The thing with being Pardo and being white in Brazil, it's also like kind of difficult to give you exact numbers because somebody who's Pardo one day can identify as white the other day, right? What happens if you have like six of your grandparents are white and two are indigenous? Do you class yourself as Pardo? Do you classify yourself as white? It can change a lot of the time. And that's one thing that I think is kind of important to remember about the difference in South America versus America when it comes to racial classification when we're talking about these things. In America, we've typically had this thing called the one drop rule, which is basically if you have one drop of African blood, you're not considered white anymore. Brazil and Argentina kind of had the exact opposite type of rule, which is basically if you look white, act white, hang around with white people, then you're considered white. So again, it's a lot more fluid in these classifications. So I wouldn't take any of these numbers, like 52% Pardo. It doesn't really mean anything. It's more of like the general tendencies and how that's kind of structured. Now, if you want to live a lot more dangerously and don't want to go to any of these places, you can go to Maceió, Jobotão dos Guararapes, and finally Fortaleza. Fortaleza is kind of like the biggest city in the north. I have a lot of people who want to go to Fortaleza on their first trip. I would not recommend it at all, but you do you, boo. But Fortaleza is kind of where the central location if you want to pick up Pardo girls, and you can pick up a lot of girls there, but again, it's also pretty dangerous. Okay, you've had enough of the north, now you want to go south to pick up some white girls. Here's the important thing to remember about white girls in Brazil. There really isn't one type. If you want a girl like Alessandra Ambrosio, then you want to go to Porto Alegre. If you want a girl that looks like Isabelle Fontana, then you should go to Curitiba. I'll give you a city-by-city breakdown in just one moment, but please first click like and subscribe. I mean, come on, you obviously like this video. Just click like, click subscribe. We know you love this. And by the way, if you're looking to travel, you love this video, click fill out the form in the bottom. Let's talk. Let me guide you. Let me help you get some baddies, bro. You don't want some baddies? Anyway, we also have my Substack where I'm writing about picking up chicks every single day. Why aren't you already subscribed to this? Why aren't we already talking on the phone, brah? Alright, so unlike other Latin countries, the white people in Brazil don't just come from the colonizer, right? So if you go to Peru, if you go to Colombia, if you go to Bolivia, Mexico, most of the white people are Spanish. You obviously have some other white people mixed in there, but the majority of them come from Spain. In Brazil, it's actually the complete opposite. And the reason for this is something that's called the blanqueamento. I've talked about the blanqueamento in a lot of videos. I don't want to always just talk about the blanqueamento. So I'm just going to give a brief overview for people who don't know. But before I do that, you might be asking why I have a picture of Ana Beatriz Barros while I'm talking. And the reason is because I don't really feel like doing a lot of slides about the blanqueamento, and she's sexier than just staring at my face. So just look at her and listen to my voice. So basically, in 1888, Brazil outlawed slavery, right? And so the north, and so the southern people, this is how you see I'm just doing this off the cuff. I'm going to be screwing up a little bit. I'm not even going to edit this out. The southern people who ruled the country, the white Portuguese people, realized that they had a problem, right? Because they had all these, indigenous and African people who are now free, right? And if you're in a democracy and you have a multiracial country and you're the racial minority, especially if you used to enslave those people, it can cause a lot of problems for you, right? So what they decided to do is they decided to bring in a lot of Europeans into the South, first of all, in order to farm it, in order to cultivate the land, in order to be able to create an independent agricultural economy, but then also, too, just so that the country would be more white and, they would have protection, basically, right? This is the late 1800s where stuff devolves into war very quickly. In fact, there was a civil war just 20 years earlier in 1861 called the Ragamuffin War, right? Anyway, so they bring all of these white people into the country, and they don't just bring them from Portugal. They bring them from Portugal, Italy, Spain, Germany, Poland, Ukraine, all these other countries. And this is the reason why you have such a diverse mix of white people within the south of Brazil, right? And so if you want to find out where you want to look for a specific type of white Brazilian girl, what you want to do is you want to look up what those ethnic backgrounds are, right? Which cities are more Portuguese, which cities are more German, which cities are more Polish, and then find it based off of that. So that's what I'm going to be doing for you for the rest of this video. And again, please just click like and subscribe. What the hell is wrong with you? All right, so if you go to Porto Alegre or Caxias do Sul, these are both cities in Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. You're going to find women that look like Gisele Bundchen or Fernanda Lima. These women are primarily of Italian descent with just a little bit of German and Portuguese mixed in as well. If you go to Joinville or Florianopolis in the state of Santa Catarina, you're going to find women that look like Aline Weber or Anna Claudia Michaels. This is basically a 50-50 of Italian and German with a little bit of Portuguese mixed in and just a little bit of Eastern European. Now, one thing to remember about Florianopolis is that Florianopolis is kind of like the most overrated, underrated place. This is like the secret place that everybody knows about, right? So it's absolutely flooded with gringos who are looking for girls. So you're it's not the best place to go is what I'm saying. Now, if you go to Curitiba or Londrina in the state of Paraná, I really should know how people say this because I spent like 2 months in this state. Anyway, here you're going to find women that look like Isabelle Fontana or Cynthia Sinek. This is the Polish, Ukrainian, and German hubs of Brazil. You're also going to find women that look like Aline Weber, but I didn't want to say Aline Weber because she's technically from the other state, but you have blonde and blue-eyed girls all throughout the state. Now, a lot of guys love going to Belo Horizonte and Minas Gerais. And, well, I can see why. It's filled with baddies like Isis Valverde and Mariana Rios. These are primarily Portuguese people, but they're also mixed a little bit more with the indigenous people. You have a lot more Pardo there because it's a little bit more north, right? So you have a lot more of that olive, dark skin, but these people are more on the whiter side of that. Sao Paulo is probably the most diverse city in Latin America. You're going to find all different types of girls there. You're going to find black people from the north. You're going to find Pardos from the north. You're going to find white people from all over the south. You're also going to find some, more interesting type people as well. Sao Paulo has the largest Japanese, Korean, and Chinese populations in Brazil, and I think it has the largest Japanese and Korean populations all through South America. Peru has a larger Chinese population. They also have a large Syrian and Lebanese community, which mixed with the local Portuguese creates women like Julia Gama over here. And then there's Rio de Janeiro. You know what? I'm going to need an entire new video entirely for Rio de Janeiro. So please click like, subscribe. Let me know that you like this content. Let me know that it makes sense for me to make more of this content. And if you want a one-on-one consultation, the link's in the bio. Subscribe to the Substack.